Okay, done.
There we go.
Here we are. Well,
Yay!
oh, we made it. We made it. And
We sure did.
I'm just going to take a moment to introduce you to the community, and then we'll dive in.
Amazing.
So I would like to introduce you, Chantal Stafford-Abbott, and she is the first interview. How do I say that? Person being
Interviewee?
interviewee. Is that it?
I
Yeah,
think
interviewee.
so. I think that works.
But from Inner Fire Women Interviews. So I'm so thrilled to be here. And with you. Like, it's just such an honor. Thank you, Chantal, for being here.
Thank you.
Chantal is born in Montreal. Was born in Montreal. Is from Montreal, and she was for over a decade. And is still? Are you still a fashion model? Yeah. So,
yeah.
For over a decade now, has been a fashion model, and has lived in London and Paris and New York and all sorts of exciting places. Traveled the world, and she came back in 2017, right, to pursue your studies in human relations at Concordia.
Yeah.
And what was the year that you decided to, or that you had the inspiration to create and found the Deep Space? So I'd love to know more about that. Like, what triggered it? Like, what is it to you, and what has it become?
For sure. Well, first off, thanks so much for having me. I'm so honored to be the first interviewee. And I'm really happy that we're having this conversation today. I can't wait to dig in. But yeah, so I was living in New York for about 8 years, doing full-time modeling, but I always sort of had on the side, either I was part of different communities or groups, and I had kind of spent, I guess you could say I'd spent my whole adult life in New York. And so all the relationships and friendships and communities and groups that I'd discovered through my life were all in New York. So then when I moved to Montreal, it was like, oh, where are my people, And although I'm so grateful and lucky and blessed and all of those cheesy words to have an amazing family that I could really count on for support, especially in that tough transition. But I found myself really missing that sense of deep connection with other people. And I think that I had pretty good one-on-one connections, like going out for coffee with a girlfriend or, those kind of one-off friendships. But I was really craving the sense of community that I didn't feel I had access to when I moved here. And I think especially as an adult, I think more and more I'm realizing that it's hard to make friends just for the sake of making friends, or to connect deeply just for the sake of it. And maybe that's like a societal thing that we put on ourselves. But regardless, came to a new city, felt like I didn't have that like group of people that I could connect with deeply. And slowly, tried to join different, whether it's a soccer club, which I'm still in and I love them so much, or, starting to do my yoga teacher training. So I eventually did find those, but at the beginning it was really tough to find my people. And so I decided that I would host a dinner and invite kind of my one-off friends and a few friends that I'd made from school and a few family members and my cousins and my brother and sister and my boyfriend. And I decided to have a meeting or a soiree that was a bit intentional, or a bit more intentional than just let's have dinner. And so I decided, okay, what's a topic that I would really like to talk about? And for me at the time, I was experiencing a lot of anxiety, and the way that it manifested was this like existential dread and this fear of death. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do something really wacky. I'm going to have a death dinner, and I'm going to invite all these one-off people, and I'm kind of going to force them to do this wacky, weird thing. And weirdly enough, everyone accepted, everyone came. And that is the legendary first, what became the Deep Space, but the first one was just a death dinner. And it went well, obviously. And afterwards, everyone was like, oh, that was so cool. That was great. When's the next one? And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm going to do a next one. And then I think it took me another 8 months before doing it again. But that was really the beginning of what became the Deep Space. So it was sort of born out of this personal need for having deeper experiences with friendships and in a community.
Wow, what a great story. I really love how you had this need, like this really deep need for connection, and also wanted to explore more about this fear, that was coming up for you, and then gathering and then giving other people an opportunity to, reflect on and think and share about a topic that, first of all, is like, I don't even know if I've ever, I have deep conversations ever, like, I don't think that topic's ever come up.
It's a tough one, but
Yeah.
it's surprising because, we ended up, this is the first time, the last deep space, now we're doing them, the last Wednesday of every month, but this is the first time last deep space that we recycled a topic and we decided to do death again. And I have to say, although I was really anxious that no one was going to show up, that it was too like intense and taboo of a topic, even though that's kind of the whole point, but I still have insecurities about, oh, is anyone going to show up? That was the event that sold out the quickest, I have to say. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So people are, given the space and the opportunity to, I think like people are really down to get to get deep into uncomfortable topics. It surprises me every time, but yeah, death is a really, I think, interesting topic to explore that I don't think, at least in our Western culture, we don't really give it that much space, except for like when it happens. And so, yeah, it was really interesting to have that conversation again, 3 years after having had it the first time. It was really cool.
I can imagine. And
yeah.
I think you really point at something super interesting there when creating a space where people feel comfortable, that suddenly they open up. So it's really not a matter of, I don't know, maybe there's like these thoughts that we are a society that don't connect and shut off and don't think, but given the opportunity and the space and feeling safe and then saying, hey, we're going to take time right now to talk about this particular topic, like a lot of people open up.
Oh yeah, I'm really, not that I don't think they're going to, but I think because I'm creating this space and I'm such a geek of interpersonal human connection and small group development work and theories and all that stuff. And so for me, I always have this anxiety of, oh, I didn't prepare enough, or I didn't, whatever that may be. But yeah, people come and they're like primed to get real deep, real fast. It's super cool. It's really, I'm so grateful that people are willing to go there with me, because it's really, it's such a choice. It's like, you can totally not participate in these conversations and not, it's a choice to go there and to really go there, not just show up and listen and kind of judge other people, but to really show up, go there and expose yourself. I mean, it's a risk. It's a risk that you're taking. And I'm always really, really grateful when people take that risk.
That's the gift that you offer them, is the and space to be able to open up, connect with other people, and be safe. Like, it's a really, I mean, my experience, I loved my experience. It was,
oh yay, I'm so happy.
Oh, yeah, it was wonderful. Also, as a facilitator, for me to kind of like lean back and enjoy the ride and connect with people I don't know and have someone else facilitate. And my facilitator was wonderful, giving everybody enough time to speak. And I loved also, because they go through training, right? The facilitators?
Yeah, we actually did our first facilitator training, because we're growing and tickets are selling out, which is so great. But I think one of the things that from the start I've really prioritized was quality over quantity. So I'd way rather have, a smaller event that really is impactful than one that sells out. And, so the idea was that if we're growing and selling more tickets, we want everyone to be able to have the experience of being supported by a facilitator we call them little pods. So when you come to the event, there'll be a little intro and then you get separated into small groups. So that's your pod for the rest of the conversation. And I've found that having someone that is just even focusing on time, making sure everyone has a chance to speak, making sure that people know there's someone to talk to or to ask, like, am I doing this right? Because, you know, some people, it's their first time doing this kind of stuff. And so obviously it can be a little anxiety provoking. And so, the intention was to have trained facilitators that are there to guide the conversation in a way that feels like totally non-controlling, but there if you need, kind of thing.
Yes.
And so we did our first facilitator training last month, and it was such a hit. It was amazing. And I'll be doing the next one in October. And then that will bring us to about 15 facilitators, give or take.
Wow.
And so depending on how things go, it might be a little bit while until we do another facilitator training. But the idea is to keep growing and have more people, to empower more people into these leadership positions. Because from what I've heard, the facilitators that I've done the training have gotten way more out of it than just those facilitator skills. And so it's been really, really nourishing to be a part of that as well.
Wow, congratulations that you're expecting a place. Yeah, that people are being trained now and they want to partake and step into their leadership. And yeah, well, I could tell. I mean, I felt very safe and loved, you know, the way that they held the room. Yeah, and the pods. That is the thing that I really enjoy, is that yes, we start as a big group, but then we get intimate into our pods and we go back to our pods. So there's also this sense of feeling secure and safe and knowing who I'm sharing with. So it's not as daunting as I thought it might be when we first talked about it. And I was
right.
Yeah. So, cause I knew that it was selling out. So I'm like, oh, how does this work? Like, am I going to be having to like raise my hand and talk, you know, to like 50 people online? I don't know. But yeah, so I get now the format of going into the pod and having more of that intimacy, and I enjoyed that very, very much. So
yeah, it's kind of funny because we started off with trying to do, well, at first it was in person, so it was a bit easier to do different groups. But we did a lot of feedback and surveys and stuff to figure out what people felt most comfortable diving deep into, and from our experiences, as well as me as the person leading this and also the other facilitators witnessing. And we kind of decided that like 5, 6, 7 people was kind of that ideal pocket where everyone got a chance to speak, and it felt like there was enough of different point of views, but then it was small enough that everyone felt kind of like, okay, this is like a mini family for the hour. And it seems to be this magic number. I don't know.
I love that. A mini family for the hour.
Yeah.
It feels like that. It's great.
Great.
Oh, wonderful. And so your next theme, your next subject is the one that we are actually going to deep dive. I love that.
Yes.
I was like, it's called the deep dive. And you're like, no, it's called the deep space. You dive deep. So, but yes, so the subject is anger and boundaries.
Yes, I'm so excited for this one.
It really vibrates so much inside of me when I think of this subject. There's so much there, and I'm excited for us to deep dive. So how about we start?
Sure. And just so you know, I mean, you were the inspiration for that topic. And so it's so cool that we're doing this now, and that we'll be co-leading the event next week. I think it will be so great.
Yes. Oh, I look forward. Yes. I
look
forward to that. I do. I'm looking forward to hearing, like, we're going to talk about it, you know, how our experience with anger and boundaries, and then, yes, being able to then partake in hearing many other voices. And that's very, I find it important, you know, to do that. So I look forward to it next week.
Yeah, me too.
I'll give all the details at the end, but because tickets go on sale today, right? So.
Well, actually, I have some, good news, but bad news, but we actually just sold out today because tickets went out technically Monday. and we just sold out today, but the waiting list is open. So the way that it works is that a few days from now, because sometimes there's people that can't come or buy a ticket and can't make it. Sometimes we make a bit more room. So if you add yourself to the waiting list, you'll get the priority tickets within the next few days that we release. And then if it just so happens that there's too many people on the waiting list, then you get a priority invite if you're on the waiting list for next month, which is going to be the topic of anxiety. So if you don't make it to this one, then you'll definitely get a chance to make it to the next one.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And then if they keep following, then they'll be able to
for sure
faster and wonderful. So I'll also post all the information when I post this.
Awesome.
Video, so let's start with anger, because I want to know your thoughts on the fact that anger is often regarded as a negative emotion. And I want to know what you feel, like how does that land for you? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question, because I think that until a few years ago, like I'm 28 now, but until a few years ago, I think that had you said that, I would go, yep, anger is bad. That's how it is. And definitely growing up, there was this sense of, oh, you've lost if you're angry, because if you're like, I had the feeling that I don't get angry because I'm kind of better than that. Or if I'm in an argument, I'm going to take the high road and not be the angry one, or I'm not going to allow those feelings to arise. But what I didn't realize was that I was feeling anger. But so here I was thinking, oh, I'm not feeling anger. Look at me. Ha ha ha. I'm so great. And then on the flip side, I actually was feeling anger, or I was experiencing it. But for me, my anger was it kind of like funneled through sadness. And so every time I felt angry, I would go, oh, no, that's not good. Push it down. And it would kind of twist its way and transform itself, because it's essentially, I view it as energy that needs to get out some way, to be expressed. And I think that for me, sadness wasn't, I think at the time, yes, I've used sadness as like a negative, but also it felt more appropriate for some reason. And that possibly plays into gender roles and the way we grow up and societal expectations of how a woman is to express her feelings about something. And so yeah, I think previously that was really how I experienced it, is anger is bad. And then so it just transformed itself into sadness. And it was really interesting, because I was working with a therapist many years ago when I was living in New York. And she told me, because I was saying like, oh no, well, I don't get angry. I'm not that kind of person. And she kind of chuckled, right? Because we all get angry. It's part of the human experience, and it's a healthy part of experiencing the world. Or so I think. And she told me, you'd be really surprised. Feeling angry, like, I can't remember how she said it, but she was saying like, if you feel anger, there is no way that you can feel like depression, sadness, and anxiety at the same time. Because when you're fully in your anger, it's taking you into this other place where it's like you're fully alive in the moment in your body, and you're feeling that heat, and you can't at the same time feel depressed, which is something I was struggling with at the time. And I only understood that concept like many years later, when I understood that I was oftentimes repressing anger. And so, they say like anger turned inwards is depression. And I think that's really what was happening, was this sense of like anger, but turned inwards. So I would feel it as sadness and therefore depression, right? And as soon as I started, and it was really scary, but as soon as I started embracing my anger a bit more, and so anger would happen, and then maybe a little bit towards sadness, but then maybe a little bit towards creating a boundary or being a bit more firm, or whatever, however my anger showed up. It's almost like it took some power away from the depression, because I was no longer feeding into it with more sadness. And so that's a long answer to say that I think that right now, the way I think about anger is that it is a necessary tool to work with. And it's really something that I feel grateful for, like recognizing when I feel that anger, because it's a sign that someone's crossed my boundary, something's off, I'm not okay with something. And so what am I going to do about it? And so I think it's really, for me, become a healthy part of leading a mentally healthy lifestyle.
I completely resonate with everything you said. And to piggyback on that, you know, if you're not experiencing if you're experiencing your full anger, then you're not going through depression, and that energy needs to move. The way also that I've experienced is, you know, that energy, it either moves or it doesn't move. And there's this thing with anger that it either can go like we have from the conversations that I've had, I've understood that most people are afraid of their anger because either it goes outwards and it attacks, or it'll go inwards and it attacks. And that attack is, for me, depression. That's what would happen to me, is that I would start to hit on myself and make myself wrong and make myself bad, and the energy would go inwards. Whereas there is a third option, whereas I have my anger, I experience my anger, but it belongs to me. I let it move, but I don't lash it out and I don't turn it towards myself. And that's, yeah, I think that's what you were from what I'm understanding, that's what you're expressing. It's like, okay, now I let it move and I say what I need to say, or I do what I need to do, but I don't allow it to attack me or go the other way, you know?
I love that concept of owning your anger. I like that. That's great.
Yeah, I like, for me, it's like this energy that's like a superpower. But I think that at first, because we've been taught it's bad, right? It's a negative emotion, that once I started trying to handle it, like be with that kind of energy flowing through my body, I was very awkward, kind of like when you're learning a superpower, you know, in the cartoons and whatnot, they destroy everything and they're like, that's kind of how I feel. Like I'm very awkward, but the more that I practice, you know, having the courage to say what I need to say, or moving it, you know, physically moving it, then I feel like I can hold it better and use it in a more powerful way to create change, or as we'll discuss soon, claiming my boundaries. So,
oh yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, love it. So I'm curious to know what's your experience in your body when you experience anger? Like, what happens to you? Does something contract or heat, or what goes on for you?
Okay, so for me, it's definitely a fire feeling. It's a energized feeling. So, and it's interesting because it kind of sounds obvious when you think of a cartoon character that's angry, you know that it's red and on fire and huffing and puffing, but it's kind of bizarre because we're not really taught to then transfer that, or I wasn't taught how to identify that in myself. And so that's where it started to be difficult. Like, I'd be like, wait, am I feeling sad, or am I feeling angry? Am I depressed, or am I pissed off? Like, it took a long time for me to make the distinction, and fine tune that. Okay, what is this? And so now I would say that physically I get a tingly, hot sensation in my stomach and in my chest, like my chest area right here. And I have this intense feeling of wanting to move my body towards something or into action. And so, whereas, you know, I could say not that necessarily depression is the exact opposite as anxiety, but as anger, but let's say depression is like so heavy and I just want to like lie down, and anger is like, whew, okay, I'm awake, I'm alive, I'm in act, like my body is tingling and it's ready, and it's kind of like, it's ready to go.
I love it. I can't. Yeah. Like fire. Here we go.
Yeah. Definitely.
Oh, wow. I love it. I love what you're saying.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting how it is different for everyone, you know, with the,
Yeah. What is it like for you?
um, I believe that it depends on how comfortable I am.
Mm.
In a situation where it takes me by surprise, sometimes I even go numb. Like I'm so, like if I'm feeling rage, the first thing that happens is I get confused. So that's something I've
Interesting.
yeah, I'm like, I don't, something's wrong. I don't, yeah, it's so bizarre what happens. If I feel, um, yeah, if I can feel it, if I allow myself to feel it, but I feel uncomfortable, then it's like, I feel like somebody's fist is in my solar plexus and just like feels. But when I'm allowed to move it, wow, then I feel like it just radiates from my solar plexus like down. It grounds me. I feel like you said alive. I feel like expansive and yet very stable. So yeah, and physically, then I just feel like it's moving. You know,
Mm.
around chest solar plexus area does it start to form like kind of like a, what do you call those, like a portal. You know, there's like,
Ooh, that's great. I want your anger. That sounds fun, actually.
I think it like shaped itself into that because I worked on it so much the past few years, because for me
Wow.
my liberation is very much my pleasure, my liberation, my power, my desire to live is like this with my anger. It's
Wow.
very fascinating. So the more that I'm allowing myself to feel it and express it and hold space for it, then the more that I enjoy my life.
Wow.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said. Oh shoot, what was it? You said, yes, at the beginning when you said that you at first were like, I don't feel anger. And I want to know more about what were those influences? Like, where did you get that information that anger was bad, that you weren't allowed, or that you like that actually, if you got angry, that it was not acceptable or not, oh, what's the word? Like, it doesn't make you, I guess, a good,
Like it's not useful or something.
yeah, all those things,
Yeah.
thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't think I can blame it on one particular thing, but I guess that it's definitely a mix of the way I grew up and the parenting style. Not, I mean, my parents are the most amazing parents in the world, but I think that at that time, a lot of parenting was focused around rewarding good behavior and ignoring bad behavior, and also a focus on not necessarily not letting your emotions take over, but I think there was this idea of like, if I was having a tantrum, and it was like, okay, like she'll do that and then we'll get back to her when she's um done with that. And I think even between like siblings, I mean, my brother Joey, I think for him, he experienced it really differently as an empowerment,
Mm,
to step into those more positive, performative, productive emotions and habits. And I think for myself, I experienced it a bit like, wait, I'm a feeler. I'm like, there's no way of denying it. Like, I am a feeler. I have a lot of feelings. I'm a sponge. I'm sensitive. I'm an empath. And so for me, not being taught, it's not only like that it's not like it was denied or that it was presented as like, this is bad, but I didn't really have the space to explore certain emotions.
mm,
And by no fault of my parents, but I think it's a mix of where we're at as a culture, where society, gender norms. I think it was just like a big ball of a whole bunch of different things. And it's interesting because the more I talk about it, the more I realize that a lot of women around my age experiences as well. And it's like, why, huh? Like, it's really interesting that as a collective, total generalization that I'm going to make here, by the way, but, you know, sadness is a lot more acceptable than anger for women. And so I don't think that it was one particular scenario or it was one movie I watched as a kid or anything like that. But I think it's a bit of a mix of culture and the way I grew up and the influences around me and just, yeah, not having that space to explore anger in the way that I hope to be able to one day have that space for my kids if I have them.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's, yeah, such a good point. Like how do we bring that to our children to allow them to have that experience, you know, to be comfortable with their anger and express it. And yeah, so that's something that same here. I'm like, if I have children, how would I go about doing that? Because I too was taught, you know, that it's not ladylike. The more that I feel that I have conversations around, you know, liberating anger and also experiencing that and doing the therapy behind it, I notice now the little things I've been fed. Like you said, it's not one thing. It's like all these little things, like, you know, watching movies where they're like, oh, that girl got angry, so she's like crazy, you know? So it's like, oh, I don't want to be crazy. It's like, oh, she's off the, you know, she's lost it, she's nuts, whatever. And it's
right.
Not that. Or, you know, it's not ladylike because, you know, we always
totally
smile.
And I mean, speaking of ladylike, like definitely being a model and working in the fashion industry for, you know, 13 years now, you know, models are expected to be always in a good mood, super collaborative, say yes to everything, and encouraged to almost not have boundaries, therefore not express your anger, therefore not have autonomy of your own feelings and your own body. And it's all super interconnected. So I think that there was definitely some reinforcement by being in the fashion industry and being in a position of, like, I'm already a people pleaser and a teacher's pet and all those things. And then being in an industry where it was like, be the most likable and be the most charming. And, but, you know, like that's how you get jobs, is you want people to like you and to want to spend the day with you and to want to, you know, and so a part of it obviously is just your DNA genetics and what, you know, what you look like. But a big part is being likable, right? And anger isn't ladylike or likable. And so I think that to kind of get out of that spiral of, you know, people pleasing Chantal, I really had to work to untangle it and figure out what it means and play with, like, going a little too deep into it and then bringing it back and then finding a good kind of middle ground. It's not easy, I have to say.
No, it's not. And I really hear that you were in a world where, like, anger wasn't acceptable, having your boundaries when it, like, wow. You know, how is the journey for you to, like, every step you need to take in order to allow yourself to have your anger and allow yourself to start claiming your boundaries, like that, because it takes energy, focus, and courage to undo all that. So do you want to talk a little bit about your experience? Maybe
Sure.
or like, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think as someone who's not only a people pleaser, but a perfectionist, I think for me, when I discovered the idea of, like, oh, you can let your anger, you can have boundaries and it's a good thing. And like, I tend to want to go to 100 right away. And as soon as I find something out, like, this is a good way to lead this part of your life, I'm like, okay, let's do it. Let's go, like 100%. And I think that, part of my journey has been learning the art of, like, going that one step at a time and not being like going from 0 to 100. And I have to constantly remind myself of that, because it's really easy for me to get really inspired with ideas, whether it's around my emotional health or whether it's around cleaning the house, whatever it is. And I constantly need to remind myself that I don't need to do it all in a day. I don't need to go from 0 to 100. Like, little steps is good enough, right? And so for me, I like thinking of it like as the zones. So there's, like, my comfort zone that's here. And then there's my stretch zone. And then there's my panic zone. And the idea being that I want to get out of my comfort zone. But if I go too far and I'm at like the panic zone, well, it's going to like slingshot me back to my comfort zone, and it's going to get a little smaller. Mm-hmm. And then if I tried it again, then it's going to go a little smaller, a little smaller, a little smaller, because, you know, I tried something and see, there you go. I panicked. It didn't work. And it's reinforcing the thought pattern that I'm not capable of putting boundaries, of feeling anger, of whatever it is I'm working on. So what I'm working on, the way I like to think about it, is going just to the stretch zone and being like, ooh, this is uncomfortable. Okay, I'm doing it. Okay, now come back. And then it's like, ooh. And then I'm like, okay, let me try that again. Okay, ooh. And growing the comfort zone, but by going to the stretch zone and not the panic zone. And that's been a real test for me, because as I said, I want to be the straight A student and I want to get it perfectly the first time. And I want to be the perfect, person who goes to therapy, and I want to impress like all the things. Right. And so it's really hard for me to be like, wait, I'm only going to go halfway with this. But that's kind of what works best, or what has worked best for me. So that's kind of how I've done it, is like one thing at a time, and then realizing, you know what? Yes, this is a situation where I feel the anger and I could put a boundary, but you know what? I don't have the energy for it today, and that's okay. And then not beating myself up about, well, you should have put the boundary. And then it's like, whoa, now I'm going back to anger towards myself because I didn't have enough anger toward, you know what I mean? So it's been, for me, the trick, or the challenge rather, has been going like little by little by little and slowly building up that confidence, so that I don't go to the panic zone and then I get slingshot back into a smaller comfort zone.
Oh, I love this imagery. I love what you're saying, because it's so important to have that positive reinforcement. Like when I practicing having my anger with my therapist, like I remember, the form of therapy I do is core energetics, and we hit cubes, just to move the energy. And I remember him inviting me to do that and making sound, and that was it, and because I was feeling angry, it's like, how about you just make sound and hit and I remember, it building and building, and finally I allowed myself to just roar. Like I was just roaring, teeth and all, and
I can see it.
Right? I know I talk about it, and I'm like, but yeah, so he was so incredible, because he just stood there and held space. And once, like I moved in and we kind of came to completion, he said, okay, so was anyone hurt? I was like, no. Did anybody die? I'm like, nope. Nobody died. and just like saying, you are allowed to have your anger. And so that positive, and in this safe context, and then it's like, okay, so how do I start practicing this outside? And this,
right,
saying, like, I try something, normally I'll like move the anger. If I have to have a conversation, I'll usually move that extra charge first, so that I can clear my head and then have the conversation, because if not,
ooh, and you move it physically?
I do. I make sense. And I say everything. Now I'm divulging all my secrets. I say everything that I would want to say that would be a terrible thing to say.
Yeah. It's like, write the email when you're angry and don't send it. And then
that's the one.
It the next day and be like, yeah, I'm going to edit all of this out and I'm going to just keep like 10% of it. I'll send that.
Right? That's exactly it. Because usually when I do that, if I pretend, I usually like imagine the person in front of me, and then I'll say everything I want to say. And I'll feel all the shame and the guilt and then the rage and the, all the things that come up. And then I get to check in with reality. Like, what's real? What's like, an old tape going? Like, is this a conversation I've had with this person a lot? Like family members, how often do I, flare up? And I'm like, yeah. So is it an old tape? Am I projecting? Did I understand correctly? Did this really happen? Yeah, so then I can take a moment to go through and kind of put away what doesn't really apply anymore. And like you said,
Totally. Because
10%.
it can be like really confusing of like how to identify, okay, is this an old trigger? Is this a new trigger? Is this something that really happened? Is this my reaction to it? Is it my reaction to my reaction? Let's take a minute, figure this out before bringing it to someone else, because I think that's a practice too, is not just like, oh, I feel something, you take it, right? And I
Yes.
think we're also pretty good as just human beings in general of doing that. Like, I don't like this, And that's also been a practice of like being able to like, it's okay to sit with it for a bit. And I have to tell myself, like talk to myself as if I'm a child, like, it's okay, you're angry, you're going to feel this way for a while. Like, let's just sit with it. Let's figure out, like, are we good? Do we move on? Do you need some more time? Okay. Do we need to call the person? Do we need to hold off? Do we need to, put a pin in it? And it starts off feeling a little bit like silly to do that kind of talk, or for me at least. But now I'm totally embracing it when it happens, or trying to.
Mm, yeah, that's wonderful. And then there are the moments that we might have to take a decision right then and there, right? Like claiming like your boundaries clearly being crossed. And those are the moments that I find the most like,
Oh, yeah. Because I don't know if it ever happens to you, but oftentimes for me, I'll have like a delayed reaction. And maybe this is something you described earlier on, is a sense of like, it's I'm still uncomfortable with the anger. And so when it happens, sometimes I just go numb, or I go like, oh, I don't know what like, I think something's going on, but I don't know. And then, maybe 10 minutes later, I'll go like, oh shit, I should have, like, that was anger right there. Like, that was a boundary crossing. And I could have said this, and I could have done that, and I could have, and so it's interesting how sometimes I'll then be angry about not being angry enough in the moment and having that delayed thing. And it's a messy process, that's for sure.
yes, right? It's like
Yeah.
that. It is, I feel, a continuous practice befriending my anger and claiming my boundaries. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
consistent because, yeah, like you said, we get caught off guard and I don't know, maybe for people like you and I that have been really taught to be, the good girl and the, don't make a scene and don't disturb and, all this, like, I feel like we have that in common. My first reaction is not to be like, hey, wait a minute, I don't feel okay right now. This is not okay. That's not my first reaction. My first reaction is like,
Yeah,
sit down, what just happened? Don't understand. Um,
totally.
so
Totally. I have kind of a funny story to tell, like in
yes.
regarding modeling and boundaries is, it's like, as soon as the old saying, I can't remember how it goes, but it's like, as soon as you think that you've made it, like, that's when you really have to look at it again and start over. Because as soon as you're like, okay, I'm there, I've got it, then it's like, oh, now you have more to learn. Great. And so, an example of that is that it took me a really long time, as a model, to ask for a proper changing room. Because oftentimes when you come to set, you're just kind of changing in front of everyone. You don't really have a space. People are coming in, delivering packages, you're butt naked. It's just kind of a thing. We're slowly getting better as an industry and having changing rooms for models, but that was something that was really not a thing for so long. And even today, sometimes I'll be like, okay, whatever. Like, I don't feel like, but I've gotten much better throughout the years. Whereas at first it would just be like, okay, I'll just say yes. And so finally I feel like, okay, I can ask for a changing room, and I feel empowered, and I know how to ask for a bathroom break and say I need water, or say whatever it is. And now with these new times of COVID, the new thing is feeling safe on set, and then having people wear masks and stuff like that. And I think some of the first few jobs, there's not, like, the first few jobs coming back from COVID, people weren't really all on the same level of sensitivity towards other people's personal space and boundaries with mask wearing and all of that. And there was a moment where someone was definitely breaking my comfort zone of not wearing a mask and being too close. And I wasn't able to say anything. And it was like, I've worked years and years to be able to say, hey, I need a pee break, or I need a changing room, or I need, and I'm like, okay, I've got this. Like I'm, and I feel good. And then all of a sudden someone's like not wearing a mask, and I'm like,
Yeah.
and then it's only like the day after that I'm like, oh my God, I should have said something. And I was feeling it. And so it's kind of funny, because even when I feel like, okay, I've got this, I've practiced so much and I know how to do this, a new situation comes up and it's as if I forgot everything that I know. I don't have any boundaries. Sure, whatever. Yeah, I'm comfortable. I don't mind. Go ahead. And I mean, you kind of have to laugh, because at a certain point it's like, oh, right, this is not I've come to the end and now I'm good with this emotion or this experience in life. It's definitely like, right, this is something that's going to happen again and again, and it's okay, and I'm going to get there, or I won't, and I'll be on a constant journey. But yeah, it's definitely it's definitely an interesting experience to be able to be aware of where I'm at in feeling my anger and expressing my boundaries, and where I need work on it, because we all do, I think.
We all do. I think your example was so perfect, because that's the journey, that it's, once we've learned how to affirm ourselves a certain way, life's like, hey, I'm going to throw you something else now. Because can you muster the courage and care and love yourself enough to be like, that's not okay with me? And your example is so perfect. And the afterwards too, being like, shoot, why didn't I say anything? And the whole conversation, I could have said this, and then we beat ourselves up. Like, what is that? Why does it do that? I still haven't figured out. Like, how?
Well, maybe we'll figure it out next Wednesday. From all the amazing, awesome women who are coming to the Deep Space. I mean, I can't wait to hear what people have to say, because this conversation we're having right now is just so interesting to me, and I'm really curious to see if the women that are coming to the event, or whoever's watching this video, if there's like a hell yeah, I experienced that as well, or if it's that's not how we just don't know till we talk about it. So I'm really excited to see what people have to say, if they resonate, if they don't, if they have different perspectives, different experiences. I'm really curious to see what happens.
Like, I would love to hear from somebody who's like, I have no problem claiming my boundaries, Like,
I know, I hope someone shares something like that, because we can learn from it.
Yes. And the thing with sharing boundaries that is you maybe not unique, but I guess what's the word? It's I guess, for lack of a better word, interesting, is that when we do claim our boundaries, then other people feel safer and better in our I often get that feedback. It's like, when I name this and this and this, that doesn't, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, it might be uncomfortable
Totally
at first, but after it's like, oh, I know where I stand now,
Totally. I have a really cute example that came to mind in the kind of same context of being at a job with some other models, and someone says like, oh, I'm going on a coffee run, do you want anything? And then oftentimes it's like, oh, don't worry about me, kind of thing. And then I'll be like, I would like an oat milk latte, extra hot, da 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 da. And then as soon as I say it, like, the other models are like, I'll have that too, actually. And so it's kind of like, yeah, if someone offers you coffee, like, take it,
Yes. See, as simple as that. It doesn't need to be this big, but it's just like affirming yourself and taking space, taking space and taking care of yourself. It's amazing, Chantal. I'm enjoying that. I could keep going forever.
I know. I feel like we could seriously talk forever. I know. Oh my God, time flies.
It does. It's been so absolutely, like, one, just getting to know you better. Like I'm really enjoying this because I get to connect with you and know you.
Oh, me too. Me
That really
too.
touches
Truly
me.
such a great conversation, and I'm definitely have a lot to digest from it. And I'm like excited. I'm like, okay, when's the next time I can be angry? I want to I want to call Mel and dance it out or something.
Yes, I think that's a good point. Like when we don't have, to have that conversation also before with somebody else, and getting the feedback, or if no, I mean, just briefly before we end, this was something that happened to me last night. I went to a group therapy session and I had something pressing on my heart for quite some time. I'm going to kind of slow down as I talk about this conversation because I want to respect well, what's the word? There's oh my goodness, it just escaped me the word, but like confidentiality agreement.
Confidentiality. Right, right, right.
I want to respect that.
Very deep spacey of you, because that's one of the big guidelines of the deep space is confidentiality.
Right.
Love it.
Exactly. Very, very, same with Inner Fire Women. Like everything we do, we agree upon
Oh, love it.
reality. And so
Yeah.
agreement is that we can talk about the experience. We just can't name anyone or describe them. But if the experience is told in service, then we're able to experience that. So there's one other woman in my group, and I was experiencing something that was pressing on my heart where I had an uncomfortable situation come up with a woman in my life several months ago. And I couldn't let it go. Like I kept having conversations in my head. Like I was so angry and like, why didn't I say this? Why didn't I do that? Da, 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 da. And so I've been holding it in for quite some time, and that just like eats away at my vitality. And I'm like, don't want that anymore. So when I became way more conscious, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm still having these thoughts and feelings. I need to deal with this. So I brought it to group, and I was able, and this was revolutionary for me, because I was not allowed to have my anger when I was young. I would get punished or like, severely rejected, or it was a big thing for me. So I was able with this other woman to have my anger, and I mean like let it out as she let out hers.
Wow.
Yes, we had the cube between us. We could hit the cube. We could scream and yell. And I cannot tell you how incredible it feels to express and be met. And it lasted maybe 5-7 minutes of like all sorts of things. And then we looked at each other, and the love and appreciation for the courage and the gift that we gave each other of like, just see me in my anger and let me see you and yours and let us be. And again, did anybody die? Did anybody get hurt? Did anybody, lose a member? Nothing. What happened was like more love, more appreciation, more feeling alive. And so yeah, it was revolutionary to have that.
Wow. That sounds like a really powerful experience. I'm like, where's that cube at? Give me that cube. I think I need a cube session. I think I'm due. I need a cube session.
We bought one because I need it. I love that thing.
Oh my goodness. Give me that cube.
Yeah, come on over. Some workshops actually with the cube. And exactly that, for
Amazing.
women to have their anger and to be seen. Because and it was because of her, that we allowed each other to go there.
Wow.
You gave permission to the other women to say, oh, I have a need. I would love a coffee. You gave them permission. So you lead by example, and you lead by example as being a really powerful leader in your community. And you bring this gift and this, what's the word? um, mean words sometimes. I'm so but you do this.
Ah,
Offer it and say,
oh my goodness.
come in and be you, and let's hear your voice, and let's hear your thoughts, and let's welcome all of that. So thank you for doing that, for being that
Mm,
person. It's
thank you.
see the feedback is like hooray, because you're selling out and people want to be trained by you and they want to be a part of what you're creating, and it's essential in today's world. So I want to thank you and acknowledge.
Well, thank you so much. I feel so inspired by this conversation, and I'm really grateful that we set this up. Again, I feel like we could talk forever on a bajillion subjects. And I can't wait to see what happens next week, and I can't wait to follow you and everything that you're doing. And I really hope to join one of your workshops. So please keep me in the loop of when they're happening and everything, because I just can't wait to learn more and do more. And yeah, this was so fantastic. This is really, really great.
Oh, thank you, Chantal. Thank you for
Thank you.
for bringing all of you and your authenticity. And same here. I can't wait till Wednesday. That's
Me too.
great, this thing, and I look forward to it. So I'll put all the information. So just so you know, it's next Wednesday at 8 p.m. So it's once a month, the last Wednesday of the month, correct?
Yep.
And if you want to be on the waiting list, you can go straight to thedeepspace.ca. Is that correct? For tickets,
Yep.
for lists, and for future events. There's also the community on Facebook. So the Deep Space community, be a part of it, share, connect with other like-minded people that just want to be free and express and connect. So is there anything else you would like me to share? Would you like to share with the community before
That sounds great. Oh, maybe just follow us at on Instagram as well. It's
Yes.
the.deepspace. And we post a lot of little features and some cool stuff there. So please follow. But thanks so much for sharing with your community. And I'm so excited.
Same here.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chantal. Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.